Happy Eid. Thank you so much for being here with us.
And thank
Um,
you for inviting me, and thanks for everyone who's joining us right now.
Amazing. And thank you for inviting Kay as well. It's such a joy to have you both here with us.
Yeah, yeah. My wonderful translator, yes, Kay.
Super. Okay, so I'll get us started off. So I'm Catherine. I'm the head bookworm at the ShelterBox Book Club. Thank you everyone for joining us for this event. We are thrilled to be joined by Huzama Habayeb, the author of, here I've got my copy, Before the Queen Falls Asleep, and Heikkinen, the translator. Before I introduce Huzama, I just wanted to give a really quick update on ShelterBox and the current response we're doing in Gaza, as it's obviously extremely topical. While reading this book, all of our minds have been on the agonizing situation in Gaza. So I just wanted to reiterate that ShelterBox has shelter aid items for thousands of people currently making its way through 2 separate aid routes, and we hope to reach families in the coming weeks. This is one of a growing number of projects we're working on for this response, and it's only possible because of our incredible supporters, of which our book club members are a great number. So I wanted to start with a huge thank you and just kind of connect everything that we're doing together.
Again, thank you so much. The pleasure is all mine. I feel humbled, and I know these are very trying times and very difficult ones. And it's I cannot imagine a better time in which we have my queen before the queen falls asleep, because you do know that this novel was published in Arabic first in 2011.
Yeah,
And when you read it now, you can connect to what's happening, because still remembering one of these wars on
yeah,
Gaza, because actually it's seasonal. We call it seasonal war, and some politicians and historians like mow the lawn. Of course, we are all acquainted now with this terminology, unfortunately. So I do hope that by storytelling, we can have the opportunity, I myself can have the opportunity to shed light on a journey for the heroine jihad, which is so distinct and so different, so painful, and yet full of life, hopefully.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean we'll get into it more, but the knowing that it was written more than a decade ago and yet how resonant it is for the situation right now. And I think it's helped us to connect to people who we might not have been able to without your beautiful storytelling and Kay's incredible translation. So thank you. So the plan is I'll do a quick introduction of you to introduce you to everyone who might not have read all the interviews I have. And then I've got one question that I'd like to start us off
Yeah.
with. And then we'll open it up to the floor. So we've got lots of audience members with questions and a few from people who weren't able to join us. So we'll ask those as well. Super. So Huzama Habayeb is a Palestinian novelist, storyteller, columnist, translator, and poet. Born and raised in Kuwait, Huzama studied English literature and language at Kuwait University before the Gulf War moved her family first to Jordan and then to the UAE, where she lives now. As well as writing novels, short stories, and poetry, she has translated several English books into Arabic. She has published 5 short story collections, 1 poetry collection, 3 novels, and is a prolific writer for newspapers and magazines across Southwest Asia and North Africa. 2 of her novels, Velvet, and now Before the Queen Falls Asleep, which we've been reading, have been translated into English, both by Kay.
Yes.
Then,
Yes.
Lucky me.
and I hope soon we will also be able to read The Origin of Love, her first novel.
Me too. Yeah.
Her writing has won many prizes, including the Naguib Mahfouz Medal for Literature for her novel Velvet and the Jerusalem Festival of Youth Innovation in Short Stories for her debut collection. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Huzama. It's such a privilege to be able to host you. I suppose I'll ask my first question, actually, and then I'll introduce Kay, and then I'm going to ask you both a question, if that's all right.
Yeah.
I'm changing the format as we speak. So yeah, my first question is sort of what you talked about. The book is kind of permeated with this sense of loss,
Mhm,
but it's also funny and beautiful and full of moments of joy. And
mhm.
I just wanted to ask what the like overarching message you wanted your readers to take from the book.
Yes. Before the Queen Falls Asleep is a novel, as I look at it, because actually every reader is entitled to see what he or she wants to see and to understand. Because when you write a story, it doesn't belong to you anymore, or a novel, or even poetry, any literary piece. It does not belong to you anymore. And the others, the readers, can rewrite it in their own way, in their own imagination. And they also can identify with the things or the stories or the ideas there, and to do some sort of projection. Uh, as I as I look at it, Before the Queen Falls Asleep is a novel of love in its purest and most immersive form. Love. It is like, the mother-daughter love. It is unlimited and uh, unconditional. It is also a novel of loss in its most also painful and devastating form. The novel tells the story of a Palestinian woman narrating her own tale to her daughter. It borrows, this storytelling ambience of the famous 1001 Nights, but with a twist in her own unique way to craft her story, which is not less intriguing. I'm not saying, of course, the same, because here uh, in this kind of storytelling here, she had the narrator or the protagonist of the novel delves into the departure of her daughter to study abroad. She digs into her own life and into the memory of exile and how it shaped her own life and her own experience. And at the very beginning, we learn that the daughter asks her mother to tell her story, but it doesn't really matter to know that the daughter is listening or interacting. We do not know that, and it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't matter anymore because she had the protagonist, the narrator. She narrates to herself, guarding her soul with the story, saving herself, not from a king, Shahrayar, who wants to kill Shahrazad, but from a reality where she has mastered, living with the conditions of being a refugee.
Mm.
No matter, I mean, against all odds and all the losses she has faced and all kinds of suffering, yet she has not surrendered and kept her true self intact. So it's a kind of a love story that can make you cry and at the same time it can make you laugh. And I don't want to go deeper into so many things, or so many ideas or themes, but mostly, as you can, from the very beginning, you notice the name she had, the name of the narrator herself. And she is the eldest daughter, but she becomes the eldest son because, not because, the father who wants a male as much as the name itself. So he called her a masculine name, jihad, and it also echoes and evokes this kind of revolutionary names, in the time of, this national liberation movements back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So he was called by his friends by Abu Jihad, so he wanted to keep the name Jihad, and it's very uh, ironic in a way that the girl, the eldest one, whose name was imposed upon her life and upon her behavior, becomes more than the man the father asked for in a way. So she is jihad, a fighter in her own self, and she becomes the real man
Mhm.
in the family, and in the end she manages to to stay strong and resilient and never loses her moral compass, not because she's a man but because she's a fighter herself.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really interesting because we read a book. just a few books ago, called Chronicles of a Cairo Bookseller, by
Yeah.
Nadia Wassef, who set up, I've forgotten the name of it now, but she set up a bookshop in Cairo with her sisters, and she talked about 1001 Nights and the impact that story had on her.
Yeah.
And then we sort of talked quite a lot about that story, and then reading this, like, a number of people have pulled out the kind of connection. So it's lovely to hear you say that as well, and connect with what we've been talking about this week.
Yes, just to give you an idea about my life personally, I came in from a family where we had brilliant women storytellers. You know, my mom, she was the greatest storyteller ever. She was so sarcastic, so witty, and has this kind of imaginative, things about speaking and talking, and you do not know the truth from the fairy tale. And also same like my grandmother, and so we are a family of
Yeah.
storytellers. Yeah.
A matriarchal line of storytellers. I love that.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Kay now and then ask you both a question, if that's all right. So Kay Heikkinen earned a PhD in French language and literature from Harvard University with a specialization in the medieval period and a dissertation on the transmission of learning in 10th century Islamic Spain. She has taught at Concordia University, Wisconsin, serving for some time as the director of the CUW's Madison Center for Adult Learning, and then returned to studying and teaching Arabic in 2002. She participated in the CASA program in Cairo in 2003 and 4. So the bookshop is called Divan. Is that right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of
So
course.
you've probably been there. Joined the NELC department at the University of Chicago in 2004 and taught several summers in Middlebury College's Arabic School. She's also published translations of several Arabic novels. So it's including this one, of course, and really interestingly, also Huzama's other book, Velvet. So the question I want to ask you is what is your relationship like in that translation process? How has it evolved from Velvet to Before the Queen Falls Asleep? And yeah, what's it like working together?
Do you want to start with that one, Huzama?
Yes, okay. I would like to thank Kay because she's not only, brilliant and hardworking, but she has a very open, some sort of open heart, and she's willing. And it was more of, it was both for us, for me and for her, like some sort of a learning process, because it is not, with translation, it's very much like writing. It is not about words. It's much more about, the culture, the context itself. And sometimes we would come across some sort of a certain word that opens the door into ideas about relations and stories and so on. So because my language, it's of course Arabic language, but it's been called and described by so many critics and writers as a Palestinian language. I developed my own language from my own Palestinian context and culture, and just infuse it with my own emotions and with my own feelings and ideas. And many a times working with translations, even some of my short stories were translated to English, I would prefer to work with the translator, because it's always a blessing. If you have the writer, at least they can manage the other language. So it was some sort of a learning process between both of us, because we have this saying that says in Arabic, al-mutarjim kha'in, the translator is a traitor, by definition. Okay, so how can we make it as decent, as honest, as authentic as possible, and to safeguard and to keep all the beauty of the language and these kinds, and to make the readers feel that, okay, it was written in Arabic, but I did not lose a thing. I don't want to say I did not lose a thing, but I did not lose so many things. You know what I mean? So the idea is how to produce it or reproduce it in another language, and to make it identifiable by others. They enjoy it as much as Arab readers. They can find in it things that maybe even Arab readers could not find. And sometimes it's a new, different world altogether. So it's some kind of a kind of piece of writing that takes you to a world that you've never been there, but okay, you want to learn more about that world. Or you will be amazed to see how things are so different as much as they are so similar also, in a way. So thank you, Kay, again for bearing up with me. I know I was a headache sometime.
For me, it's been really wonderful because I've had the entire gamut of experiences with authors. I've had an author whom I know and whom I consider a friend who would not answer an email even on the most urgent question. And when I finally had to just guess and decide, okay, this is my judgment. And the opposite extreme of that was when I asked Huzama for help. She not only gave me help, but she was willing to read the whole thing and catch my foolish mistakes at times and then give me background on things. For example, there's a line of poetry early on that's cited in this book that I would not ever have been able to interpret fully, but as a wonderful prof, she gave me not only the poetry and what was behind it, but the whole context and how to think about it. And if you have all of that, then you ought to be able to translate.
Thank you so much.
That's incredible. I love that. And I think you can really read it in the text. It reads as though it's like from the Arabic. And so it takes it, like, I think for some of us, it took a little bit of time for us to get our ear in, to readjust to the really lyrical, beautiful language. But that, I think, is a testament to how close it is to the Arabic. And now
yes, I think so. And also my language is lyrical in itself. And because, if you have read, at least, I'm pretty sure not, maybe you cannot read, the 1001 Nights. I mean, altogether, they call it Arabian Nights. I don't like this name. But anyway, at least some people read maybe a synopsis or certain parts. It's written in a lyrical way. So that, because usually, even I remember, the storytelling for us by my mother, my father, even my grandmother, it was some sort of in a poetic way so that we can remember.
Yes.
And therefore, this format of the novel actually is infused by this lyrical language, which is actually me. Even in Velvet, I was commended. I took the Najib Mahfouz Award for the best novel. It was in 2017, and the panelists, they said, the referee, that mostly the language itself is so lyrical and so distinct. It looks as if it was her own language. So it's part of because language is, an extension of your emotions, your life, and your feelings. And it is through words that we build relationships and we build, kingdoms of love and kingdoms of hate.
Actually, if I could add, that's what most attracted me to this. I was offered Velvet before I knew the first thing about Huzama Habayeb. And I read just the first few pages, which are so lyrical, describing the rain coming down. And I thought, oh, I have to try this if I possibly can.
Oh, I love that.
And that's why before the Queen falls asleep, it's very much like as for Once Upon a Time. It should be lyrical. And, you have this kind of entrance. بلغني أيتها الملكة السعيدة at, Shahrazad and Shahrazad, she would say, it has reached to me, oh, happy king. Now she is talking to her daughter, but she tells her something different. Sometimes, happy queen, naughty queen, and like that. So, and it is put in Arabic in a lyrical way and in a poetic way. And also, Kay made sure to just to convey this, this kind of mold, storytelling, poetic old Arabic, poetic, storytelling. It's rather. The challenge was, this is old, but still can be updated and can be modern in a way, and to give it to the reader, because people, every single person loves storytelling.
Yeah.
It is, usually you want to convince them, you start with a story. They keep telling us stories, when we were young. And I'm so lucky because I was brought up in a place where there's always, storytellings and singing and dancing. So it's part of the way I was brought up, and we keep just telling stories to each other.
Yeah.
If I could add one thing here, I think it's maybe particularly important in the current context to realize the depth of the culture that is behind this. This is the story of a very poor family, after all, and it gives the story of the larger family. You know, we get to know many
Yeah,
characters in this family
yeah.
and neighborhood, and it's easy to think of them as, you know, just poor people, right?
Mm.
And then when you realize the depth of the culture that's being drawn on, it gives an altogether different picture.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go to one of our audience questions then, I think. Top of the list is Linda.
Mhm.
Linda, do you want to read your question out? If you do, I'll give you a second or two to raise your hand. If not, I'll read it for you. Okay, I'll read it for you. So Linda says, from the first chapter, I was gripped by the narrative voice, by the character of Jihad. She immediately came alive for me, and I was invested in what happened to her. What was the inspiration for the creation of Jihad?
Thank you, Linda, for this question. It's a lot of people keep asking me, is jihad you? I would say jihad is many women I met and I knew very closely. And certainly, certain parts of jihad in her character has to do with me. I was born as the eldest in the family, but of course with different numbers and different backgrounds and like that. And I lived in Kuwait. I was born and raised in Kuwait, and I studied there. So I get to know a lot of people, and it was very, very, intriguing for me that when I visit, a colleague or a friend or a relative, and I always come to feel comfortable at their home. In a way, I feel that I know this home, and it comes to me that this is very much like our apartment, our
Mhm.
house. I don't like to use the word home for a house. We say home, but actually it is not a home. We usually say home because a homeland, and at Kuwait or in Georgia, we say this is home as if we want to have a homeland. We make our own houses, like a homeland. So in these apartments of the many jihads I met, okay, you go to the same kind of furniture, the same kind of beds, and sometimes you go to the same kind of shops because no, this is the cheapest. We are
Mhm.
recommended to go and buy from there because they will give you a good price, and the same kind of cooking. And I remember I was a child and I didn't like my what was my mom cooking at the time, so I opened our neighbors, and I went to have my lunch there because I was pretty sure they have the same recipes. Maybe they will prepare something different for me. So the protagonist she had, and is someone whom I met, and I'm pretty sure Linda and everyone who went on to the novel, he would have met kifah, jihad, nidal. They all synonyms of struggle and fight, because wherever you go, you find someone that is almost identical. You are looking at a mirror, not necessarily the same, of course, features, but the same kind of life. And you have this small family, Palestinian family. You think it's small, but it is an extended family. Every single family in Kuwait would support other
Mhm.
members of the extended family, the brothers, the sisters, cousins, uncles, and like that, in maybe refugee camps in Jordan, in refugee camps in Palestine, in refugee camps in Syria, in Lebanon. And so it was a tapestry, a very rich tapestry. They are they have little things, the meager way of living, but very rich and full of, this kind of interaction. And that's why they talked about, being naked, you know, the way women are naked and show their flesh, you don't feel any sexual drive there. You know what I mean? I mean, it looks as if like some sort of, sharing their own life, their disgust of their own bodies,
Mhm.
their ironic, and sometimes, pathetic, commentary. Oh my God, I look ugly in the mirror. We keep saying, what I mean? So it's very funny. Even so, when somebody, I do remember, these, just describing the women, they are naked and like that. When you have so close encounter, emotional one and visual one, it doesn't matter if you are in wearing clothes or naked, as long as you are angry about something, or want to share something. So this is the kind of life I was exposed to, and I'm blessed because I managed, hopefully, to invest in it properly, in writing at least.
Yeah, definitely. You reminded me there of I can't remember the exact wording, but I saw a poet talking about how like the biggest mistake we've ever made was to think that poverty referred to anything other than money, because
Yeah.
people are so rich in so many ways, of like food culture and stories and music and love and so many ways, and money is only one small element of any person's life. And so
Yes. But unfortunately, these kinds of quotes are said by rich people, you know.
I know.
Yes, I know.
I can't remember who said it now, so I can't.
Yeah. Because we were so angry, you know. I was so angry because sometimes when somebody would tell me, you know, I tell them, okay, I'll tell you what, I read a quote, I had to keep it at my office. I know that money does not bring happiness. Just give me money to prove that to you.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we'll go to another question. Thank you so much. Thank you, Linda, for your question. We've got these are all sort of about jihad, so I'll keep on the theme. This one is from an anonymous person, so they won't want to come on the screen. It says, jihad seems like a superwoman keeping the family afloat. Is this a situation that you have had to directly experience, or you've had to do yourself?
Yeah, actually, in a way, it's close to Linda's question, yeah, because at least I met 2 or 3 jihad-like women, and they even had to deal with worse situation than this, you know. So it's actually because I was also some sort of, not the major breadwinner, but I was like a major contributor, you know, in the family, and it's always connected to the eldest son. But I was surprised to see that many women, Palestinian women, and still are actually, even when they get married, they're still connected to their family. Because if she got married, you know, sometimes you have an agreement, okay, I'll be working like, let's say, like a teacher, but please keep in mind that I have to give some of my money to my family. I need to support my family. I'm involved, you know, in just supporting, especially the education. You know, it's very important in the Palestinian household. If you have 4 or 5 kids, they have to go to proper schooling, to go to college, university, because we believe that some sort of education is liberation, its own way. When you're educated, you start talking about, you know, your own life, your own situation. And also, if you're not even in politics, you don't, I mean, not necessarily you educate yourself to be an activist, but to work, to have a decent work. So it's only through education that you can have a decent work. And I was surprised, I'm still is, to see how many Palestinian women, okay, be it single or married or whatever their social status is, are so deeply engrossed, you know, in the welfare of the bigger family.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thank you.
But can I say something? For
yes, please.
Jihad is not a superwoman. If she was a superhuman or superwoman, she wouldn't have endured all this, you know. I mean, it's her love. There in her life. I mean, the most important thing is love. You know, when she managed to find love, it was doomed in the end.
Yeah,
not to be, if you know what I mean. So actually, she is resilient, and what matters for Jihad is, no matter what she has faced, you know, when she was in Kuwait, and she has even to work with some of the maids who were running because they were abused and like that. She just, you know, to have her own, you know, value system, that not to break, and to safeguard her own spirit, her own self, you know. And as I said at the very beginning, I mean, she knew, I mean, her moral compass, you know, she know, I mean, it's intact. That's what matters for her, because she's losing, okay. It is not only the loss that matters, but what does this loss can make out of you. you know.
Yes.
Yeah, I think people really connected with her resilience um and like not like more than admired, like felt
Yeah.
like feel very strongly for her as a result. Actually, this next question, sort of also from an anonymous attendee, kind of follows on from that connection that your writing has done for us. They say, after I finished the book, I found myself thinking, as I was going about my day, what would Jihad be doing in this moment? What is she doing now? So I wondered if you ever think or look back on your characters and what they might be doing now, whether Jihad or Maleka.
Yeah. I think they are doing right now, considering what we are facing, the same kind of pains and sufferings, albeit even more. I'm in touch with some of my childhood neighbors in Gaza. This is rather personal, and I remember our she was, like 10 to 15 years younger than me. She was like a kid, and usually when her mom was away, we would take care of her. She got married, and she had children, and now in Gaza she lost half of her family. Okay, and sometimes she sends to the family, telling us that they want to hold on, the family, to keep connected, because it's for them okay, we have lost a lot of people, but we still have some to take care of.
Yeah.
So jihad is living, is losing, but still resilient.
Yeah.
Hopefully she's still resilient.
I have no doubt she is. Thank you. And yeah, I don't know how to really say how sorry we are for like the losses you must personally be experiencing at the moment, and that we're with you.
Yeah, these are very dark moments for us and for me on a personal level, because and my father was the first generation refugee. I'm the second refugee, and just recently he passed away years ago, like in 2014. And I would keep asking him about his collection for the Nakba, because he lived the Nakba.
Yeah.
And he would say very few things to me and would not elaborate. And I would be very angry. Why don't you elaborate? I mean, you were like 7, 8 years old. You must have, you do remember. And sometimes he would write certain notes, or he would talk to me, but he would not say much. And now I knew why he wouldn't tell me a lot about it, because it is a great deal of humiliation, a great deal of pain. And I cannot imagine, when you feel you are so threatened as a child, as an adult, and we are reliving the things that our parents have lived, and we are just witnessing some sort of your whole existence, is under huge threat. And that is why writing comes in, and it is reflected in Before the Queen Falls Asleep, because actually when Jihad is telling her story to her daughter, as to pass to her, the legacy and her own story, so that the daughter would just add new chapters to it. It's also part of safeguarding the collective memory of the Palestinian community, the Palestinian life. If you have any questions, please just stop me now before I go on. But you need to know that Before the Queen Falls Asleep was the first Arabic novel that tackled the Palestinian community in Kuwait. There were more than 400,000 Palestinians. And it's very interesting. I mean, we're not talking about political activism, because the PLO was established in Kuwait.
Yeah.
It was there in Kuwait. And you have some sort of a community which was very interactive, which was a highly educated community. And also this community, like 500,000 persons, they supported millions. And they were, after the Iraqi invasion and the Gulf War, they had also to witness, and I was part of those people, another displacement, another expulsion. So it was very important, to start and at least to shed some sort of light, to tell the story of this community. It took me 20 years, 20 years to be able to see it from above, because when you are part of it,
Yeah.
it's rather difficult. You don't have this kind of, multi-dimensional thing. And that's why I'm keep telling myself, what are the stories about loss that we are going to read in years from now, maybe next year after. And people are writing, and I have so many writers. They're sending me some of their their daily notes, and some voice messages about what they're suffering, feeling numb, feeling unable to do anything. And I have a writer friend of mine, instead of writing, just collecting the flesh from under the rubble. So this is mind blowing. I said, I thought that I would have never witnessed anything which I've seen back in the 1990, but it seems still the worst, it seems, is yet to come. So I think it's very important that writing, for me and for others, is part of telling our story, and to preserve the collective memory.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's one of the real powers of fiction, that you can share like both history, like older history and more modern
Yes.
history, with a real emotional connection, and as Before the Queen Falls Asleep has hope and humor, and that kind of the whole spectrum of humanity, which you don't necessarily get in a non-fiction history textbook, but you can in a novel, and so it's more than just like a record. It's a kind of time capsule of emotion as well.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I think I'm going to pass over to Catriona, who's got a question from somebody who can't join us this evening.
Oh,
Yes. So I've got a question from Laura Graham, who said, as I was reading the book, I was struck by how much it felt like I was reading a memoir. I think this is due to the non-chronological structure, but I wondered whether elements were inspired by your life.
Well, actually, yes, I did answer this question, but I'm going to say it in a different way, if I may, just to it's of course, I always keep telling, usually you read a story or you read a novel, and you believe that this person must have lived something of that. Of course, we write about what we know. There are some elements of my life and my family's life, actually, the extended family even, but in a different context, in which every single person in this era, in this same kind of fabric, can relate to it, because it's part of their life. And it was one of these things, the Arab reader in particular, like Palestinians living in Syria, in camps, living in Jordan, in different, camps, and they would tell me, oh my God, as if you are in our home. Oh my God, this is my aunt. Oh shit, this is my mom. Sorry, can we say this words? Or it's kind of, because yes, because usually you relate to it. And when we all gather as a family or friends or like that, and we laugh at the same kind of jokes, and we share the same kind of views and like that. So there are some sort of elements, let's say, like minor elements, but they are made major through the projection on other people's lives. That's what makes it much more relatable and personal. And usually, using the personal narrative in storytelling also is much more compelling, because I was, to be honest, at the time of writing, I had some sort of personal conflict. Shall I make it like the personal, the I narrative style, or the omnipotent, and the absent ones? And I just figured it out. I wrote some sort of like few paragraphs in both styles, and I felt detached from the other one. I felt much more related, and I thought it will be convincing that the reader would think that the author is talking about her life. And that's what I wanted people to know, that I'm telling them my story. That can be your story, everyone's story. And I am more than confident that not only Arab readers, but even, someone else reading, this story in any part of the world can at least identify with certain elements. We all love the same way, we all lose the same way, and trust me, if you taste your tears, it will taste like mine. I'm pretty sure about that.
I mean, that's a
If I could,
lovely phrase. I feel like that's going to stick with me. If I taste your tears, they'll taste like mine. Wow, thank you so much
that's
for that.
wonderful. If I could add a little something just to pick up on another aspect of that question, the questioner alluded to the the creative form of the novel, and this is something that I particularly liked, was how I think we think about things in terms of topics or things that we're concerned with, and to have that come up naturally without necessarily having a through story and a little bit over here and a little bit over there, but just kind of have the whole thing organically grow. I found very attractive myself.
Yes, I know, the idea is that, it's always you have this kind of struggle between, especially in novels, like, because, poetry, okay, it goes without saying that this is you on paper, but, between, the first person, the third person, and I've been moving in my writings between more than one form, but especially for Before the Queen Falls Asleep, I just, it was there from the very beginning. I tried to go somewhere else, but I thought, you know what? This story needs to be told this way because it asked for itself to be this way.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you for your question.
So we've got another question here from, I don't know who, I don't think that's their name, so I'm not going to read it. Which says, would you say that men come out worse than women in the novel? And if so, was that intentional?
Well, this is a very tricky question, but a very important one indeed. This is a women, novel. It's a novel about women that is told in a way even different in Arabic novels. Usually, unfortunately, talk about feminist novel and feminist writing. And when you be so personal, talk about yourself and you're detached and living in a castle and no one is there. And, this was so dominant in the, 70s and 80s. And so this one, it brought women down to earth. Okay, she's just working hard and she's trying to support herself and her family. And all the men introduced in this novel, they are introduced through the eyes of women.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're not given a voice. Is it meant to be? Maybe. I don't know, because you do not think about that when you're writing. You cannot be deliberate about it. But I was actually, one of the critics wrote about what's fascinating about this novel in his own point of view is that all the men are marginal and they are presented through the eyes of women. It is a celebration, of the not empowerment of the women, because they're not necessarily empowered, they can't, but she is introduced. They are so plain without any kind of cosmetics or beauty, or any makeup. She's like there, just showing her body, her flesh, her veins, and talk about, even, the sex scenes between men and women, some of them like in the bathroom or in a crowded room and like that. It's only, just people are getting married to bring, just to bring up kids and like that. So it's not really, when you talk about the women in the family, it's not because women are bad, but because all the males in this novel, they are presented by women. But I dare say, I think, and I'm pretty sure, because I didn't want it to look like that, but it was, this one actually developed from some sort of a relationship between me and a special man. So this novel, Before the Queen Falls Asleep, introduced one of the most affectionate father-daughter relationship, which you cannot find in any Arabic novel. We come, we hail from a society where it's some sort of, we call it, patriarchal in a way, paternal society. And usually the authority is in the man. even the brother, the eldest, let alone the father. And sometimes the eldest brother authority is an extension of the father figure himself. So in this one, you don't have this traditional orthodox daughter-father or father-daughter relationship. It's some sort of a peer-like relationship. She's, she's a counterpart. And actually, she had the authority because she had the major breadwinner. And she doesn't have any sort of contempt or hatred or resentment or anger, even when her father, he did some cheating in the draw, who would go, because he knew he's not the man of the household. Jihad is the man of the household. She is the one who can go and work and provide and put food on the table for the family. And she knew he was cheating, but it didn't matter, and she did not confront him. She did not tell him, I knew that you lied or you cheated. So it's a kind of love relationship, also in a way without any conditions, or any some sort of boundaries in a way. And we can feel this love and this kind of being a peer or a counterpart when they talk, when they sing, when they dance together, and then also they have a cigarette. And not only that, but she's the only one. He would tell her that he fell in love with a woman in a balcony whom he didn't know her name. And she listened carefully and she respected that. I mean, you cannot find that in a traditional Arabic household, but it was in my household. And I can tell you a great deal, of this father figure is based loosely on my father. He was a very funny person, and he took all the bad decisions in life, which we paid for. And he has this sort of quirky character with, some sort of clumsy person thing. And you can never hate that person. He was zero at, just managing our finances. And we know that if he is taking any financial decision, that's it. Our life is over, we tell ourselves.
If I could add just a little to this, it struck me that there are men who are very sympathetic figures. The father, as Huzama has said, first and foremost, but also the professor she loves is in many ways a sympathetic figure. But each of these makes mistakes. They make bad decisions, and in a way, that's sort of a tribute to them. They're allowed to be imperfect. They don't have to be superheroes. So it's not, I think it's not necessarily that the men are weak or they're not okay, or, it's only the women in the novel. I think it's two things. One, that Huzama said, they're introduced through the eyes of the women, but also they are allowed to be fully fleshed, imperfect humans, which we don't necessarily expect.
I think I think we are the result of our bad decisions, not our the wise ones. Trust me, it comes. I know that perfectly well.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of nuance to them, and I think someone described the apart from the father and the professor, a lot of the men in the book are kind of peripheral. Like we're sort of in the zone of women, and so they exist, but they're on the edge, and so we don't see them in as much detail because they just don't come into the day-to-day of her life. So, but I loved your depiction of the father, and I think a lot of people really connected with the particularly the scene where he's dancing. It's like a really funny, really human moment. And I'm thinking now, like if all of our tears taste the same, maybe all of our fathers dance in the same embarrassing way.
Trust me, and he was a lousy singer too. Don't remind me.
We've got a question actually that follows on really well from that, which is some incidents in the book are tragic but told in a comic way. How do you, as a writer, strike the balance between comedy and seriousness, I suppose?
This is the most comic. Actually, it's very tragic in a way. You cry and you laugh, and a lot of my some of the readers, they can send me emails and like that, and we tell us we couldn't know. I mean, sometimes we start crying about a scene, and also we laugh. Like there's the scene when her grandmother she dies, and she manages, her wig, and she died like a queen like that, and every single person cried about it. And also when Jihad was traveling, and usually when I'm writing, I separate myself, in an environment which is very close to the environment of the writing itself. And I do remember the scene about, the desert,
Yeah.
when she was, she left Kuwait to Jordan, and she had her baby Malika with her,
Yeah.
and Jihad couldn't go to the bathroom. There were no bathrooms, and she cannot do anything, and she peed on herself.
Yeah.
And she looked in the mirror, and in a way, I saw my face in the mirror. And while I was writing, I didn't go to the bathroom for a long time. I want to keep this, sense of urgency, and unable to go.
Yeah.
I kept it there, and I just had a great deal of pressure, and not everyone can relate what I've been to. And it was, at night, and I have only, everything was off, the lightings. I just, a very lousy table lamp, and I was just clicking and writing, and at the end I cried.
Yeah.
I cried, and I knew it must have been very bad, because I was, in Kuwait, and I had to move Jordan, but certainly it wasn't like what Jihad has witnessed. But I met some women. They told me we had to bury kids in the desert, in the Iraqi deserts, and some of it actually was there in the novel. So it's a kind of living and to relive, and it's very interesting. I'm so thankful to you and to your questions and talk about it, because it was strangely enough, or maybe it's not that strange, that Before the Queen Falls Asleep was one of my works that got received so many reviews, but mostly so many, messages and emails from writers that would contact my publisher and they said, can we send her a personal email? And I remember a letter that came from a reader in Iraq. She's a woman, and she told me that I lost my son in accident, and I was unable to communicate with people, and I severed some sort of a depression like that. And a friend of mine gifted me your book, and she told her, just read it. And she said, I kept it for, like weeks. And then when I read it, she sent me, I still keep these emails for me, personal ones. She said, I just wanted to tell you, I'm not a woman of words, she said, and I don't know how to express myself, but I need to tell you that I read your novel in a time I discovered I most needed it, and in a way, it saved me.
Oh.
And I think, for me, if I wrote this novel just for one person, then I can die a happy woman.
But it's connected with many more than one person, I think.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. It's and I think that immediacy, that what you've been saying about your writing process, that really comes through in the writing, and it's probably why so many people are interested in how true the stories are, because if you're bringing that to your writing process, it's creating a real sense of truth in the writing.
Yeah. I have to live it. It's a kind of thing, like, if I were, you keep, as a writer, you ask yourself, if I were in this situation, what would I do?
Yeah.
And almost, of course, not in all scenes, but there are certain scenes I remember also, like in Velvet, the heroine, she breaks the bed. Usually when she breaks the bed, it means the end of marriage. So, and she brings some sort of heavy, sledgehammer like that. And I couldn't try it for 2 days. And, and then I brought a sledgehammer and I bought some wood and I started, just breaking it. And the next day when I slept, I couldn't move my arms, because it was a heavy physical, activity. And that's it. So I made her break it. And when she slept, she couldn't wake up because of her arms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brings it all together.
Hopefully, I'm not going to write about killing someone.
No, yeah, good. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
If it's all right, I think we've reached the end of our hour, but we started a little bit late. So can we keep going for 5 more minutes? Is that all right?
I'm all yours. I'm
Okay.
all yours.
We've got one question for Kay, which I'd love to ask, if that's all right. From Fran, who says, how do you go about translating without influencing or editing the text at all? Or is that a process?
That's hard. It's very hard. I feel as if my first responsibility is to put into English as well as I can what I hear when I read the Arabic. So that means that I try not to edit very much, except as I feel I need to in order to make the English flow a bit, or to make it smoother on the ear. Other people do more. I've just been reading a French translation of a novel that I'm working on, and I'm amazed because that translation just edits out, half sentences every paragraph, if not more. And I'm thinking, wait, you can't do that.
Yeah.
At least my feeling is that it's my job to convey as much as I can about what my impression is. Of course, my impression may be faulty, and that's where Huzama is so helpful, because if she would read something and think, well, wait a minute, that's not what I meant, she could tell me that, and she would tell me that, and that was wonderful. There is some editing because, the languages are just not the same. We keep trying to make them more similar, especially teachers and students thereof. And so that does require some rearranging at times and reemphasis. But I'm always listening for tone as much as I can, and trying to convey that. How successful, whatever. I do my best, and then we see how it comes out.
Yes, you've done your best. Thank you, Kay, really.
Brilliant. Okay, so we probably should begin to draw to a close. Oh, this has been what an amazing hour. Thank you so much. I suppose the question we generally ask is, what are you working on at the moment, and where else can we find more of your work, and see what you're up to?
Yes, I'm working on a new novel, and I started it actually 3 years ago, but during which I lost my mom.
Oh,
My mom, when she passed away, it was very difficult for me to handle, and I was drawn into some sort of like a hole that I'm being honest and passionate about it. At least now I can speak without crying, because I remember one day I had a meeting and I had to, while I was talking about her, I cried. So actually, when she passed away 2 years ago, I felt that there's nothing I can give afterwards. But then I always remember that she always rooted for me, and she would celebrate every single book I have, even though sometimes she feels very angry because, I'm being so outrageously, daring and talk about men and sex and like that. But she said, it's okay. It's okay. That's your life. So yes, she was witty, smart, and lovable, and I cannot imagine a person who can love someone like her. And I knew that she wants me to go on, so I'm back, and hopefully by the end of this year, it will be there. It will be out. And hopefully we'd meet next time to discuss it.
Yeah.
Send it to me.
Yes, please do.
Send it to me, please.
Okay, of course. And I would hope that you, the beautiful ladies, also would have the chance to read Velvet.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be sharing a link to buy a copy of Velvet with the recordings tomorrow, so everyone will get that. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading it. And Kay, where can we find, you've translated a number of different texts. Are there any others that you would recommend if we're on an odyssey?
Well, if you're interested in Palestinian history, then the other one I've done, aside from Velvet, Velvet is more of a personal story. I think one of the critics said that it's the most political novel possible without a word of politics. So it's quite aside from politics. The politics have created the situation, but they're not there. But the other one is The Woman from Tantura by Redwa Ashur.
Yeah.
Because she takes it, she begins in 1947 with a young girl in a village. So it's at the time of the Nakba. And then she continues on with that girl's story and her extended family. And they live in diaspora, and it's a fairly comprehensive review of Palestinian history from the point of view of a family that's been expelled and is living outside. And I quite like the character. It's in a way you sort of know the story because the story is the story of Palestine, but it's done also in a creative way with flashbacks and outtakes and humor and things on, as well as a few history lessons on the side. And then I'm just now doing the edits, which I admit I'm suffering from a little bit, but I'm doing the edits for another one by Redwa Ashur, which in a way is similar. It's not ostensibly about Palestine at all. It's a trilogy about Granada, but it's what she did as a sketch for The Woman from Tantura. She starts this one in 1491 in Granada, and then tells the story of a family that lives through the Morisco period until the expulsion
from Spain,
in 1609. And so I've done that one, and it's going to come out inshallah in November. So
wow, okay, well, we'll keep an eye out for that, and I'll find The Woman from Tantura as well.
Thank you.
They sound wonderful. Amazing. I suppose there's nothing else to say without continuing on for the rest of the evening, as I kind of would like to, but we shouldn't. So thank you so much, both of you, for coming. It's been a real honor. Thank you to everyone for your questions. Thank you for the team for helping, and particularly Catriona, who this is her last event with us. And yeah, we'll book club cycle, I always have to remember. So your next book, Side Splitter by Phil Wang, is arriving tomorrow or Saturday, potentially into next week if the post is being slow. And we'll be voting on our next book next week. So lots to look forward to. And yes, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Huzama.
Thank you so much. Thank you for every single person who's been with us. And I hope you would enjoy reading before the Queen falls asleep, and to get to see so many things. And I'm pretty sure there can be so many, questions and thought-provoking ideas about, because it's a story that is being still written, even, regarding, the Palestinian diaspora.
Yeah, and may we live to see a peaceful resolution. So,
and thanks also to our head bookworm. I've never seen a better title.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, I envy you. I told her I'm jealous.
I would suggest that everyone choose their own title, because it's really fun.
Yeah, it is. Not everyone can afford it, trust me.
Thank you all, and good evening and good day, Kay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
So much. Bye.